even though when they fight each other, an external aggression comes, we were able to put ourselves together. If I count Ethiopia's historical past, let me just tell you a little bit what Ethiopia is, because maybe a lot of this memory, everything is moved by memory. Maybe the historical memory, the longitudinal kind of presentation, they give us a sense of why they were able to continue to resist no matter what happens. So ancient history says Ethiopia is perhaps the only African country with spice of history and culture of the ancient Mediterranean world. Ethiopians are known for their naval exploration of Punt, a coastal city on the Red Sea. Egyptians believe that their forebears were Ethiopian. The ancient Egyptians are seen as Ethiopians. If you see, I don't know how many of you have seen the pyramids. If you see some of the pictures, they are not like the modern Egyptians. Modern Egyptians, maybe some Europeans and others have come. There's mixing. In the ancient time, it was more African. So if you see the history, a lot of people who write, the period when Egypt became big, and the pyramids and everything were created, it was more African. All the knowledge, like Athena, yeah, Timbaland, all stuff is African, and that's Ethiopian. So a lot of people think a lot of knowledge and humanity, everything came from Ethiopia. Ethiopian dynasty established in Egypt in 720 BC. There are two versions of the origin of Ethiopia. Ethiopia, the land of the sunburned faces. This is one version. In this sense, Ethiopia can mean the whole of Africa today. Ethiopia covers current Djibouti, Somalia, Eritrea. Ethiopia and parts of Sudan and southern Egypt. Ethiopia is said to have founded the Ethiopian nation. Said to be a great grandson of Noah. Aksum was founded by Ethiopia's son Aksumai. Ethiopia, as a state, said to have been forged since the 10th century BC. Current Tigray and Eritrea are the origin of Ethiopia. Eritrea is the origin of Ethiopia. Aksum, I had to make a film. I was in South Africa, I made a film on it for Ethiopia. So it's very difficult for me to split Eritrea from Ethiopia. So because of this, because you are the origin of Ethiopia. Aksumite kingdom from 300 BC to 10th century AD. Aksumites expanded far beyond current Tigray and Eritrea. At its peak, Aksum controlled southern Egypt, the territories of east of Aden, south of the Omo River, west of the Nubian kingdom of Nero, also even a portion of current western Saudi Arabia. We are all extended. The period of Prester John, we came all the way to India. So the cities are here. The cities are legendary. I met some of the cities. I was quite surprised because we are connected, even with India. So at its peak, Aksum controlled, okay, I said this, I did this. The post-Aksum era, Judaism and Islam influenced Ethiopia. Queen Yodit, 1980, sealed the fate of the Aksumite Empire. Yodit was Judaic, and yeah, a lot of people see it as negative and so on. Ethiopian territory shrunk from its Aksumite extent. After Yodit came to the Zagwe dynasty. This is interesting. I was recently in Kigali, in Rwanda, and you will not believe, I don't know how many of you have been, you see it at the museum, the Genocide Museum. The most interesting thing is they say a lot of the people look like Ethiopians. And when the period came, at that time when the massacre was happening, they used to throw these people into the sea. They say, swim back to Ethiopia. And a lot of people think they went to Rwanda during the period of the Zagwe dynasty. There was this period when the Yodit period to the Zagwe dynasty, the period when also people migrated to the south, all the way to Kigali. So, and you can see that they look like Ethiopians. And in the period when there was genocide, they used to throw these people into the water, saying, swim back where you come from. Yeah. So they used to tell them like that. That's what they told me. And you can see the Genocide Museum. I don't expect any of you, I don't recommend you go and see it. It was scary. Yeah, it was very scary. But I don't know why people are so cruel. I can't understand this. It's not just killing, it's the way they did the killing. Anything I can comprehend. I don't know why, but that's another story. But it's Ethiopian type people that were murdered, genocide, not the other people. And the period was of the Zagreb dynasty. The so-called Solomonic line came from 1270 onwards. The medieval period came with major efforts. The expansion in the reign of Hamad in the 14th century. There are called linked the state and church in the 15th century. That's when Christian Orthodox Church became more linked and became part of all the resistance also. And you know, in the resistance, Ethiopia's resistances, the church is also always part of it. And you can see some of the churches in the war, in the Italian war, for example, some of the bishops, so on, were also part of it. But one of them, the Italians, put the aircraft, they threw one of the bishops from St. Mike. And we don't have even a statue for him. I was saying when I was in Ethiopia, I said, why don't you talk about him? At least, you know, Sunday try to talk about him now. We need to recognize this because they fought them. So they were, the church also belonged to the became part of that. So expand Eritrea from Shoa, the capital development, okay? Between 1527 to 1535, or the first half of the 16th century, the rise of Ahmed the Left-Handed, aided by the firearms from the Ottomans, lorded over a vast Islamic empire stretching from Zayla in Somaliland to Massawa in Eritrea. So it went all the way. So can I just say, I don't understand when Oromos say, where Kulil, in Oromo Kulil, they are all over us. They are in Eritrea, they are in Gondar, they are everywhere. So honestly, I mean, that storyline is that we are connected completely. Portuguese intervention and firearms saved the land of Prester John. Prester John is supposed to be also India. It connects, you know that story. So we are part of it. In 1543, Ahmed the Left-Handed and his forces were routed by Belarius as Belarius. The big story about this. Oromos from Ganale, Bali and Borona regions expanded militarily. The era of the princes that lasted for 150 years saw Oromo generals as kings and peacemakers in Gondar. The Oromo language was during the era of the princes a court language in Gondar. My name is Muchie. Please, I could be Oromo. I don't. No, I'm not saying this because we're so mixed. So it's not good to criminalize the behavior that it's dangerous. It's not good. It doesn't reflect our reality, our synthesis, our hybridity, our connections. We should. The same thing in India. You can't divide. We all look similar. So what's the big deal? The Jews are the same. Look at one humanity. So ancient world, current day Ethiopia is connected, especially culturally, historically. Medieval world, same. Judaic period, what's the name that you said to your That's a Judaic period. Islamic period, that's Rai Muhammad. Christian period is the rest from then. Zaman al-Masafid, connected but in disarray. Modern period was connected, split by the 19th century imperial design directed at Africa. That's why Adwa is very significant. Adwa victory, age of empire. It came during the period when we were in trouble. Over a century ago, the Ethiopian people and the national leadership, they acted like one and they did the fight, united the nation, and they created this. Internally, all the Bari groups from Oromia to Eritrea were mobilized and contributed richly to the success of the Adwa victory by all Ethiopians, to the depth and breadth of the land. This was not a victory of the leaders of one ethnic group. This was a national victory with a wider African Indian world significance. It was and remains an exemplary episode demonstrating what the united people can achieve the support of the African diaspora and anti-colonialists in the global south living in Italy, the rest of the world. I will give you some examples about the diaspora, from Cuba, everywhere they came. Ethiopia's ancient history occupies roughly the same territory from the Red Sea to the Indian Ocean. The people who live between the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean are not pure one ethnic group or another. They are hybrids. What works is a hybrid historical imagination, foster unity and not to divide them by purifying hybridity. Adwa victory was a major anti-colonialist battle fought by all Ethiopians under the skillful leadership of Emperor Menelik and Empress Adwa. This victory resonated well beyond the Ethiopian and indeed African border, which represents the clash between colonialism and liberation on a world scale. So it involves all of us. Every year during Yekatid, Adwa can provide the occasion to appreciate fully the international significance of the Ethiopian victory over the world colonial project in Africa. The failure to put this victory in the context of the wider challenge which continues to confront Africa before, during, and after the 19th century needs to be put right. So remembering Adwa across Africa, the whole world, is the global south, is necessary. Adwa victory highlights Ethiopianism's anti-imperial colonial project significance very convincingly. It was decisive and clear. So, the unity to resist together in 1896, the 19th century confrontation against the scamper for Africa, the unity of the people, the leaders, the regions, and the army to defeat the Italians in Adwa, that has shown a capacity and imagination to transcend all varieties of divisions. Unity is paramount to realize a decisive Adwa victory. Adwa great victory against the scamper for Africa. It's another historical record that Adwa victory signaled the beginning of the scamper for Africa. That is what is called the Age of Empire. This book, if you read it, by Raymond Jonas, is the Harvard University Press book on Adwa, fascinating. You really need to read that book. He talks about this. The most interesting thing about Adwa, why it became very, very important, was it happened the moment it happened, Age of Empire. When all Europeans united, divide Africa into pieces. That is when a decisive victory came. What did it mean? It gave the message to all the anti-colonial struggles, including India, everywhere. It gave this message, aha, a weak nation can also defeat powerful nations, powerful imperialist nations. That message was very, very important in the Age of Empire. And that's why he says it prevented, he said, the Europeanization and the Americanization of Africa. Because it meant that if they are defeated in Adwa, the next battle they do will also be a problem for them. So it gave that message. That's basically what he says. So it stopped this, and in that sense, Adwa, he says, is very, very decisive victory. This victory was a crucial chapter in the record of African resistance liberation. It armed generations of Africans with the confidence of victory to engage in resistance liberation, to attract attention as far as the Caribbean and the Americas, not to mention Europe and the rest of Africa. Adwa victory reversed the imperial colonial project designed to populate Africa with Europeans like they did with America. That's what it stopped its Americanism. It deserves to be celebrated both as a significant episode in its own right and as a memory serving well the emerging communities of resistance in the African world. Never again to surrender to colonial tyranny. The Battle of Adwa is not just a memory of the past. It continues to live on in the eternal river of time as the best expression of Ethiopianism for resisting effectively the world imperial colonial project. That's basically what it is. This event took place 120 years ago. A relatively small and weak country against Italy, a formidable, highly armed and ambitious new colonial power is still relevant today. It is unified, united, and not divided Ethiopians that brought the victory to a full realization. It is the strategic thinking of the leadership that made a big difference. The support of the African diaspora and anti-colonial forces across the world was inspirational. So, Adwa victory and Ethiopianism. Ethiopianism was created Africans in the diaspora by deriving significance from Ethiopia that inspires the liberation imagination of Africans as a whole. The way Ethiopia has been understood served as an example, the cry for Africa for Africans movement, Africans for humanity, humanity for God. After the victory over Italy at Adwa in 1896, Ethiopia acquired a special importance the eyes of Africans as the only surviving African state. 1872 to 1928 period is called the classical period of Ethiopianism, because it was at this time that it exercised the greatest political influence and was most widely noticed in the European, American, and African press. Studies have been done. I have written 2 chapters on Ethiopianism with one of my postdocs. He's Dr. Henry Kaidemse. He's now in Kenya, and he was with me in South Africa. I brought him from London, and he knows Giz, which is quite the ancient Ethiopian language. So we worked hard to make sure. That's what happened when I was in South Africa. I didn't know anything about Ethiopianism until I went to South Africa. I didn't go to South Africa. I was teaching in Europe. I probably never learned anything about it. Now I know something. So at least we wrote 2 chapters, 2 books. But I want to write a book. I hope I get a chance to write a book. Let's see. By the God's grace, I should write a book. This is so important to write this book about Adwa, about Ethiopianism. Although Ethiopianism originated as a religious movement, it was significant in establishing the demand for the emancipation of the peoples of African descent inside and outside Africa. Ethiopianism asserted that African history, civilization, and culture, the source of pride and fountainhead even of European culture. That's what it says. After discussion with those who formed the Ethiopian Church on the wider meaning of the designation Ethiopia, all agreed that according to the prophecies, it literally refers to all non-European people. This is a woman called Brenda Cruz. I met her in Cuba. Then I was talking about Ethiopia, and I told her. She said to me, "Mammo, I have written pieces on Ethiopianism." Then she sent me not all her, about 300 pages. Sent me the part of Ethiopianism. That's what I quoted from her. Quite fascinating. So it's a thesis. It's not published, but that's where I got it. Ethiopianism involved an awareness of the history, values of African culture. African history and culture became a source of pride, with emphasis laid on glorious African kings and empires, on the widely held belief that African culture and civilization had been the fountainhead of European culture. That's from her thesis. The political aspiration of the Ethiopian leadership saw the ideal chance for its own ascent, the eviction of the European and removal of slavery from the African continent. That's what part of Ethiopianism meant. If you go to Cape Town, there's the Ethiopian Church of South Africa. I went to Port Elizabeth. I was doing a mentorship. There's postdoc mentorship that sometimes they ask us in the National Research Foundation. So when I went to Port Elizabeth, in the hotel, I asked the guy, I said, where do you belong? Which church do you belong? I didn't ask him, give me my hotel number or a room first. He then said to me, I belong to the Ethiopian church. Because there are so many churches, there are about 6,000 churches in Southern Africa. Ethiopian churches. They're very, very strong. Now the Ethiopian Orthodox Church is connected with them. And there's the Ethiopian Church of South Africa. There are many churches. They started around 1884. 1884, Mammo Church, then later church in the Malabar started in Pretoria, and Cape Town, Port Elizabeth, East London, all of southern, where the Xhosa people live, where Mandela and others come, Thabo Mbeki, all of them. There's just lots of churches, different churches. And the manifesto, how did they create the Ethiopian Manifesto? The Ethiopian Manifesto was written by Robert Alexander Young, a slave preacher, in defense of black man's rights in the scale of universal freedom. I am sorry I can't tell you all the manifesto describing it, but I just collected a few things. Yeah, it's interesting. It's an African American slave, free. He called it the Ethiopian Manifesto, and it was in 1829. Ethiopian Manifesto, Young addresses both black and white people. Young identifies African diaspora as Ethiopians. He tells Ethiopians, he calls all the African Americans, not African Americans, Ethiopians. He tells Ethiopians they only enjoy a few of their birthrights because some has continued to be enslaved. He writes to Ethiopians and all slaves in hopes of making them aware how mistreated they have been. Young questions how his skin color plays a part in making him eligible for God's gift. Why is it that white skin is considered more eligible to receive God's gift? They ask for freedom for everyone because it's given to everyone by God and not by mortal men. When he addresses white men, he accuses them of denying slaves their rights. Let them know, regardless of their mortal riches and social standing under the eyes of God, they will pay for their actions in heaven. Identifies himself as being descended from Africa. He says there is a connection between all black people. He says black women, men, and children are the same heritage because of Psalm 68:31. It goes on to say, princes come out from Egypt. Ethiopia is two stretched hands unto God. So you see how they gave a spiritual sense of Ethiopia and connected it to the reality in terms of their oppression. And it's really a spiritual thing. So Ethiopia meant more like, how can I explain this to you? It's not a country or anything, it's beyond the country. It's beyond history. It's something spiritual, godly. Humanity for God. Africa for Africans. Africa for humanity. Humanity for God. Direct access to Christ. Direct access to God. And then say to the white people, you are wrong. You go to hell. Ethiopia takes us to heaven. It's extraordinary thinking. It's a rethink. Unthink to rethink, unlearn to relearn, completely undesigned to redesign, a whole new way of imagination. I am fascinated by it. I don't know about you, but I find it very fascinating. Not because I'm Ethiopian. It's just fascinating that they interpret this from what they consider to be what Ethiopia has and has not. I mean, I'm just fascinated. Ethiopia has been described as a religion from the manifesto of September 1896. 5 months after the Decide Saga. Look again. It's like, again, the religion idea of Ethiopia. It continues. Unite together Christians of the African race in various denominations in the name of Jesus Christ to solemnly work towards and pray for the day when African people shall become an African Christian nation. That's what they say. He said. This manifesto in 1896. To pursue steadily, unswervingly, the policy Africa for Africans, and look forward and hasten by prayer and united effort the forming of the African Christian nation by God's power and His own time and way. Ethiopians, in the face of the inequality, even after they have appropriated Western religious platforms, Christianity and civilization, were protesting their exclusion on all levels, and asserting that Africans could whatever. So I just tell you this, again, on this Ethiopian Manifesto in 1896, it's the same thing like it happened in Southern Africa, 5 months after Adwa's victory, but again they gave Ethiopianism much more religion, same, almost similar to what Alexander Young did in America. So they, like Karl Marx did the Communist Manifesto, they have two manifestos, one in Southern Africa, the Ethiopian Manifesto, one in America, okay? Another manifesto, all Ethiopian manifestos, but similar in terms of the way they described them. They gave them this spiritual sense that they derive from the reality and the presence of Ethiopia, and whatever it is. So the African leadership reacted to the erosion of African political power, economic well-being, and social stability by establishing independent bodies exclusively for Africans. So the Adwa victory is a key pillar of the Pan-African Triple Helix. 1896 Adwa victory provided African resistance history during the scramble for Africa. Hence it becomes one of the pivotal helices for Pan-Africanism and Ethiopianism. I call it the struggle heritage for Ethiopia. It's best expressed by Adwa victory. So the other helix is the World Union of Ethiopians, Africans, formed at the African Association, 1896 from the diaspora. The Pan-African Congresses classifies helix too. They started in 1900. They were founded by Sylvester Williams, who was in direct contact with the Emperor Menelik at the time, before 1896. The association started in 1897. Before the Adwa victory, Sylvester Williams was in direct contact. How should we help you? The Emperor. And this, all their letters. I have a friend called Kemi Ito. He works at Goldsmiths College in London University. He's Nigerian. He's written a paper on this, fascinating, about this connection of the The link between Emperor Menelik with the Pan-African Association when they were created. And then not only did they make him the first honorary president, he wasn't there. Emperor Menelik doesn't like to travel. Emperor Haile Selassie used to like to travel. Emperor Menelik, no. So when he says he doesn't want to go, they made him honorary president. The first Pan-African Association. So it's a fascinating link. So that's why the linkages are quite interesting. The third helix is the formation of the African National Congress. It celebrates its 100 years into its first liberation movement, ANC, was formed with spiritualism and Ethiopianism, acknowledged by former President Mandela. Fundamental tenets of the Ethiopian movement were self-worth, self-reliance, and freedom, said Mandela. These tenets view the advocacy of Ethiopianism like a magnet, a growing political movement. Yeah. No, I think I was last night or this. Yeah. Ethiopianism like a magnet, the growing political movement. That political movement was the culminator in the formation of the African National Congress in 1912. It is in this sense, says Mandela, that the African National Congress, we trace the seeds of the formation of our organization, the Ethiopian movement of the 1890s. So you can see, Mandela, he says he doesn't like to go to Europe, France or England. He prefers to go to Ethiopia. He rootedness. That is to do with his imagination. That the entire movement, the whole liberation movement, they use the ecclesiastical space of Ethiopianism to incubate the political liberation struggle of the Southern Africa. That's what they did. It's a fascinating combination: spirituality to liberation. That connection, that link, was given by Ethiopia. So African American churchmen who went to South Africa in the 1890s arrived at a time when some African Christians were setting up churches of their own. This independent church movement was called Ethiopianism. Ethiopianism became a generic term to describe the whole range of the black man's efforts to improve his religious, educational, and political status in society. It's extremely interesting. Can I just say this? African Americans went to South Africa, and then the college called Lincoln College, or University or College, I don't know where it is, in Kwame Nkrumah with that college too. They were able to take some of the people, some of the people who became ANC founders, African National founders, were people who were taken to America. They came back. John Langa Bilele Dube, the first president, ANC. All these people went to America, they came back. And then what happens? When they came back, they got connected to this Ethiopianism movement. That's how it happened. And then they started saying, well, if you don't help us with the church, we'll do this. So that's how ANC started. So African Americans have some contribution also to the formation of the liberation movement in Southern Africa. So it becomes a concept that constitutes Pan-African in the 18th to 20th century. The Adwa victory provides practical expression of Ethiopianism, self-worth, dignity, unity, resistance, confidence, self-reliance,